Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this Thursday morning. I'm quite aware that there are lots of other places you could be spending your time, so thanks for spending some time and heading over here this morning, bringing with you whatever it is that you're carrying today. We are so pleased to welcome La'Tonya Wiley, Assistant Director of Affinity Alumni Engagement, who is herself an Elon alum, to offer our music this morning. In addition to all of her work at Elon and in the community, she's a professional actress performing regionally, and we are so glad to have her here this morning. So please help me to welcome La'Tonya.
I couldn't figure out what to sing today, especially after yesterday. And so I polled some friends, and they gave me some lovely suggestions. And I think that everybody was just looking for something that would be encouraging and uplifting. So, Jamie, thank you. Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven, heaven and home? When Jesus sees my portion, a constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Oh, why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows come? Why should our hearts be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus sees my portion, a constant friend is He. Oh, His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. So I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. Oh, His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me.
Thank you so much, LT, for kicking us off on that start this morning. I know I always love the phrase that music is so often the language of our hearts and helps us to put into words what we can't do with regular speech. So thank you for doing that for us this morning. Our speaker today is a familiar face to the Truett Center and to the university as a whole, and we are so pleased to welcome Reverend Dr. Kirstin Boswell, University Chaplain and Dean of Multi-Faith Engagement. She's been at Elon for year 4, Wow, year 4. This is year 4. But prior to coming here, she was Associate Dean of Student Support Services and Associate Chaplain at Brown University, the Chaplain to the Institute and Director of the Office of Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life at MIT. She completed degrees at the University of Virginia, University of Chicago, most recently getting her PhD from the University of Chicago as well. She has been crucial and influential in leading our department and leading our campus through so many times of uncertainty and tribulation, and so we are so pleased to welcome her this morning. Please put your hands together for Reverend Dr. Kirstin Boswell.
So I speak for a living, more or less, and I struggled to really have much to say today. As late as, or as early as 2 this morning, I still didn't really have much to say, but something came to me, and so please bear with me as I share with you this morning. So good morning, first of all, and thank you for being here in the spirit of our Newman Lumen theme, Transforming Walls into Windows. I'd like to share some reflections with you this morning on the power of being seen, especially for those of us whose identities are too often unseen, misunderstood, rejected by a society that has a historical record of struggling to honor lives and perspectives that challenge its ideals and narrow standards. So this is more than simply a call to acknowledge others. It's about the hard work of also recognizing our own self-worth, even when the world around us fails to. It's about knowing when to speak out, but knowing when to retreat for self-care, when to protect our energy, and when to rise with courage in spaces that, for many of us, were not designed to support us. In Christian scriptures, in the biblical story of Hagar, we meet a woman whose life is defined by others. In the Bible, society views Hagar as a servant, a woman of color, a mother, a person of no status. Hagar's identity, her story, and her worth are continually dismissed. When she becomes inconvenient, she's cast out into the wilderness, alone. And yet, it's in the wilderness, in her most vulnerable state, that Hagar encounters God. She becomes the first person in Christian scriptures to name God, calling God El Roi, the God who sees me. As a Black woman moving through predominantly white spaces, Hagar's story resonates deeply with me. I know what it is to be in rooms where people look at me without seeing me. Instead, when I'm acknowledged at all, it is to see an idea, a stereotype, or a role that they've already defined for me. In academia, in ministry, and community life, countless times, my true self has felt invisible, and I was expected to adapt, conform, or simply shrink to fit someone else's limited views of what I should be. This tension, as I'm sure many of you know, can weigh heavily. We all want to belong and to feel valued for who we are. Yet a quiet inner voice also reminds us that some of us, never will be, never will belong fully. But we should also tell ourselves that it shouldn't matter because our worth is not tied to other people's approval. We are valuable because of the roles we play, in part, but far more than that, we are valuable because of our inherent dignity. Like Hagar, I have had to find strength in the truth that the God that I believe in sees me, not the polished version of myself or the role that I stand in, but the whole of who I am and loves me as I am. Living with an autoimmune condition, an illness often invisible to others, adds another layer to my experience. There's not a day that I don't manage pain, fatigue, and physical limitations, things that others rarely see. They normally see me presenting like this. But those of us with invisible illnesses know the difficulty of carrying burdens that aren't apparent to others. As a Black woman, this experience is compounded by the constant need to work harder just to receive the same recognition, pay, and right to existence as others without my identity markers. There are times when my body simply can't keep up with these demands, and it's in those moments that I feel the weight of invisibility most profoundly. I know that one day, there may be a day, when my body will not do what I ask of it, and I wonder, what will my worth be then to this society, to this institution? Our society often fails to honor experiences that aren't immediately visible, whether they relate to race, to health, to gender, or other identity markers. And in a nation where the divides between us seem to grow more profound by the day, we tend to see each other through labels, simple labels, rather than as whole human beings with complex lives and hidden stories. After this election, many of us are feeling more marginalized than ever, knowing that the votes cast by those we share space, classes, work meetings, and conversations with may have been against our right to exist, thrive, and to feel safe and seen. As a Black woman, I feel this reality acutely, and I know I am not alone. Minoritized communities, LGBTQIA+ individuals, minority women whose reproductive rights are at stake, many of us are asking ourselves what it means to belong in a country where even our right to exist is up for debate. Many of us, not all, but many, live with the existential fear brought on by climate change, racial injustice, and the erosion of hard-fought rights, and race. There's always race. And I too sing America. Langston Hughes says, "I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes, and nobody will dare say to me, 'Eat in the kitchen,' then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed, for I too am America." The fear and the despair can sometimes feel overwhelming, but it's in the very wilderness of these emotions that I encourage us to turn to Hagar's story once more. Hagar's encounter with El Roi, the God who sees her and her pain and her worth, is a reminder to each of us, regardless of our religious views, that we are worthy of being seen in our fullness. Hagar shows us that even in a hostile environment, there is divine presence that acknowledges our pain. And this story calls us to look beyond assumptions and beyond categories, to see each person's sacred dignity. But how do we bring this sacred spirit of seeing into our daily lives in times like these? How do we honor the Hagars among us, the people carrying invisible burdens, struggling against a world quick to judge and to dismiss? And in this human community, how do we create spaces where every voice, every identity can be fully heard and truly respected? Some of those small transformative moments are simply when someone has looked at me and said, "How are you really?" When someone listened with genuine interest without trying to fit my story into their expectations. Gestures like these are simple and small, but in a world where so many of us feel unseen, they can be sacred and revolutionary acts. They remind us that our worth is not conditional, that our stories matter, and that we belong. And so as I close, I think back to something from my homiletics, my preaching training, We were taught that every message should end with hope, should end with a rejoice, should end with a shout, even if it began in lament. So here's where I find hope. The belief that we can bend the arc of the universe toward justice if we commit to the radical work of seeing and honoring one another. To be truly human in these times is to resist labels, easy labels, to defy assumptions, and to embrace each person's fullness. And so let us go forward in this manner, with a commitment to seeing and being seen, to honoring dignity and complexity in every single encounter, and recognizing that we are all beloved and worthy, no matter what the world might say. This is how we resist despair, and this is how we refuse to give in. This is how we can transform walls into windows and create a community where every voice and every story matters. In terms of despair, I would like to read this as a word and a note of caution. By John Rodel, keep a close eye on your heart tonight. Despair has a way of turning into indifference if we aren't paying attention. I don't know if the devil exists, but if there is one, his name is apathy. So let us resist despair and refuse to give in. And let us commit to transforming walls into windows. So thank you. And may we walk together in this spirit of honoring, of seeing, and of belonging. Thank you.
In the spirit of Dr. Boswell's closing, that we should end on a high note, I would like to reiterate from words that she said that we shouldn't look to the world for our happiness and for our belonging, for our identity, to accept us and to endorse us, to legitimize us. We have to remember that through it all, we remember we are who God says we are. And God says that we are loved. God says that we are special. We are beautifully and wonderfully made, fearfully made. God says that you deserve all the goodness of the world. And I also remember that in the word it says that the joy of the Lord is my strength. It also says that he gives us beauty for ashes, and he gives us the garment of praise for our sorrows and our heaviness. So I find that in moments like this, when we're troubled and heavy laden, that you just have to find joy and remember that joy that God gives us and praise and dance our way out of it to endure it all. So this next song, I'm going to need some audience participation. So I know it may be a few Baptist folk out there that might be able to help me with this, but it's very simple. The song is called This Joy That I Have. The world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. All right? If you got two hands, raise the right hand. Raise the left hand.